Hey, what's up? Welcome back to another awesome episode, super awesome episode, if I may say so myself, episode of the Lifeonaire Show podcast. I'm Jason Wojo. We got Polish Peter in the house. What's up, dude?
I would say super duper ooper awesome episode, not just super episode.
All right, man. There it is. There it is. Today, we're going to be talking about making the jump from being an employee to an entrepreneur. There's a lot of tactical things you need to consider, a lot of mindset things. There's a lot of strategy behind this as well. And the reason why this is so important is if you've been following the news at all lately, you have seen a staggering amount of layoffs. You've seen a terror. By the way, if you have a job right now, you might be terrified yourself. Even Amazon, just a couple days ago, let thousands of people go. They've had their largest layoff in recent history. We have Microsoft, UPS, like everybody, and not even to talk about the recent government shutdown, right? And so the ability for you to make an income on your own, independent of somebody else signing your paycheck, is just one of the skills that I believe is your only source of real security in this world. It's the only source of being able to provide for your family and put food on the table, because at the end of the day, I don't know if we can rely on anybody else to do that. And when you do put somebody else in that position of authority, you really give up a lot of your autonomy and your agency to make the choices you want to make, to kind of chart your own path and make your own destiny. And so, dude, I'm super passionate about this. Both you and I had full-time jobs before we became entrepreneurs. And so I'm excited to kind of start diving into this.
Yeah, I mean, both of us actually went through the transition of going from W-2 to a full-time. Actually, I went from W-2 to part-time to full-time, and I learned a lot of lessons of what not to do during that particular time. So, so let's talk about this.
So, dude, the first thing for me, when I look back at my change, and I went full-time into business in, I believe it was 2011. And so we're almost 15 years in at this point. And one of the things that made a big difference for me that I didn't fully wrap my head around before I quit, and if you make this change now, it'll be a big thing. You've got to position yourself and have the mindset of understanding that you eat what you kill when you're an entrepreneur or a business owner. And when you're an employee, you're kind of fed, right? You go to the kitchen table and the food's ready for you. That's the sort, and what I'm talking about is a paycheck, right? But when you're a business owner, there is no paycheck coming in. I mean, at some point in time, we can talk about yes, it's a good idea for set yourself up in payroll, but you're still writing the check. But you have to go out there and get the business. You have to be the one to go out there and find customers and sell your service and get this whole thing running. No one's gonna do it for you.
Yeah, and I think it's a really important aspect to kind of look at from the perspective, because what ends up happening is, when you see that, when you discover that for yourself, you're going to have to figure out, what is the why? Why am I going after this? I think the why is so important. Most people don't look at it from the perspective when it comes to business. And then, how do you react to this idea? Okay, I have to go take care of it myself, as opposed to giving him a check. Because if I am worried now, I'm freaking out and how that's going to play out and what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do this, guess what? It's going to be very difficult for you to be able to grow. So it's this kind of idea between, scarcity versus an abundant mindset. So mindset, what Vojo was talking about, is so important to be able to go and get onto this entrepreneurial journey. And there's different aspects of the mindset that I think is really important for you to look. So one of the things that I discovered as first, what I did wrong is I did everything myself. And that is one of those mindset things that I wish, going back, if I would have done it a little bit different in my first business, start looking for someone else to help me as opposed to doing it myself.
So how would you have hired somebody if you're just starting your business and you don't see? I'm thinking of the person who doesn't know what they need yet.
Well, so one of the things that I remember thinking about is okay, I need to create my website. I need to get the business cards. I need to go and get clients. I need to go and, there's list of 1,000 different things. And what I decided to do is do everything myself. So what I did is, if I didn't know how to do something, I started learning how to do this, fixing that weakness, right? Figuring out how to solve that problem. So what I would do is I would start looking from the perspective of what are my biggest weaknesses that are needed to be resolved like right now, not in 6 months, not in a year, but right now, and getting somebody else to do it. Because then it cuts down the curve of me learning all those different things. Like I remember learning the code when this was in 2000, I want to say 6, 7. So I remember what that website design thing was that I was using back then. I don't think it was PowerPoint, something else. I don't know, some kind of template thing.
Doesn't matter, yeah.
Yeah, but I was learning how to do all this. It took me months to do that, right? So is it necessary to have the website, right? Or is it that I need to go and start focusing how to make money? And now what I know is number one, I need to start learning how to grow in the revenue. Bring some money into the business, bring money. So money, revenue. So what are the things that are on my plate that I'm good at, that I need to focus to generate the revenue? And then some of the things that I'm not very good at, see if I can go and partner or help someone help me get those things done.
I see it a little bit differently with some overlap. Like I don't think if you're not good at something, that is not an excuse to not learn it. If you're not good at selling, guess what? No one's going to sell your product like you do at the start. Like it's just there will be a time when you'll need salespeople, but if you can't convince somebody why something is good, you'll have a very hard time, I think, of somebody else. And so I just want to say, and that's not to say that, because listen, like nobody's good at anything when you first start. Like I didn't know a thing about business, and if I would have offset all of it, I wouldn't know anything. So I think finding the things that are not crucial or core to your business that really you should, to your point, the thing I agree with is like you got to be focusing on the money-making activities. Like, and this is another mindset shift though, because when you're an employee, it's not about doing the work that matters. It's about staying busy for 8 hours a day. You go in and you're there from like 8 to 5, and you are filling that time with junk, mostly. I mean, just to be frank, like you're checking emails, you're walking to the water cooler, you're grabbing like a long lunch. You're not effective, and the reason is because you have to be there the whole time. Like, and so if you had a boss that allowed you to leave as soon as all your work was done, you would be out of there at lunchtime, right? And so you have to shift your thinking about filling hours to, it's not about the hours. It's about what you do within the time that you're working when you're an entrepreneur. Like, so you have to really reprioritize things so that you are getting the biggest bang for your buck. And along those lines, you have to know what is the biggest constraint in my business. Now we talk about this at the Business Builder Workshop. And there are phases of business growth and development that you need to be really aware of and be working on that constraint. And anything else that you're working on, you're wasting time. Now, yes, you're working. Yes, you're getting stuff done. You're designing your logo. You're getting your colors, your branding, your blah, blah, blah. It's all garbage. Like, I'm sorry if that sounds harsh, but like until you make money, like that has to be your biggest thing, especially, what can happen is like you can freeze as soon as you have that lack of a steady paycheck coming in. Like it can be terrifying. And in fact, what you're really doing when you leave your job is you're trading some of that financial stability, which by the way is kind of a myth anyway, because we know people can get laid off, with like you're trading that with the ability to make your own decisions. And so you've got to make good decisions, and you've got to really like invest in yourself and do the things that matter most.
Yeah. So, I mean, I agree with you on that. So when I was talking about that previously, I wasn't talking about, I was talking about website design, those kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
Sales,
a very
you are the best
specialized
seller
thing.
in your business, right?
Yep.
So you do have to, certain things you have to learn. Like as a business owner, one of the things that's going to end up happening for you, you're going to have to grow a level up. Every single time you are growing in a business, you're leveling up as a leader, you're leveling up to the next level. So yeah, I agree with you on that. So now, when it comes to generating that revenue, making that money, that is, I think, one of the things that people, when they transition from entrepreneurship to the business owner, what ends up happening, they butt up against this fear, because now they have to step out of the comfort zone of doing something they never did before. Because if I'm an employee, I'm doing something for someone else. Even I've had conversation with people who were working for a company, and they were in a quote-unquote sales position. And when they went out and wanted to do sales for their own company, they couldn't, because now is a different kind of a thing. So now when it comes to that, you're going to have to step out and work on that skill to be able to grow to the next. I'll give you an example. One of my students right now, he knows very well that he's going to have to make phone calls to reach out, to create sales, to make connections, to grow that side of the business. And I asked him, so how's it going? And he's butting up against not making calls. And he started making all kinds of different excuses. Well, I got to take care of this first, take care of this first, take care of this first. So that is what's in front of him right now. And I challenged them to like, listen, you got to figure out your why of why you are doing this. So then you start making those phone calls. And that's what we're talking about right now, to be able to get him to out there. So know this, you're going to have to be stepping out of your comfort zone all the time. That's a big shift, I think, between working for someone else and entrepreneur, because you are basically working for yourself right now.
Dude, I think being an entrepreneur is almost the best self-development course you can take. Like you will be forced out of your comfort zone if you want to be successful. And I mean, and you have that chance to kind of cower back if you want to and choose security. But I'd encourage you to kind of focus on self-reliance over security and outcomes versus just being productive or not productive, but like actions, right? Like staying busy. And it is a mindset shift. And it's one that sometimes people struggle to make. And that absolutely shows up for them. And I'll tell you, like, the quicker you can dive into this and realize like there is no like lifeline, but at the same time, this may sound, exact opposite what I said. If you play out the worst situation in the worst scenario, like what is the worst thing that can happen? Like, are you going to lose your house? Okay, let's say you lose your house. Then what? Could you go live with a family? Could you go with a relative? Could you go back to getting a job? And if you look at like what's really at stake, you might find that like it's not really that much. So why not just go for it?
Right. Yeah. And, you're going to also find out when you get on the other side, you made that phone call, you make that sale or whatever it might be, you find out on the other side it wasn't as bad as you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
That fear, right?
Yep.
So that's big, I think. Another thing that I think is really important for people, especially when they're starting entrepreneurship, is to surround themselves with people who've been there, done that.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think a lot of times what we end up doing is we go on it by ourselves, and we think about it this way. We go back to the people that we know up to this point to talk to them and get some advice from them. And guess what? A lot of them are employees as well. So what kind of advice are they going to give you, right? So I think it's really important to surround yourself with people who've been there, done there, entrepreneurs who've been successful, someone that can pour into you, someone that can encourage you, someone that can, cheer you on. Because I think it's important because there's going to be valleys, especially entrepreneurial at the beginning. It's kind of like up and down kind of a thing, right? So you need that support system to be able to go and get through those tough moments, tough times.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, those are the biggest mindset things that I found, man. Really just making sure you're doing the right stuff, getting over the fear, and understanding the relationship between what you do and what your outcome is going to be. The other thing I would say, and also some people do struggle a little bit with the identity of it. Like, I was this high paid, whatever. Mm-hmm. But I feel like once you're successful at business, like, that's something that can go away. But in the meantime, your vision is really that thing that should give you your identity isn't your job role. It's like it's so much more than that. It's like, your vision is almost your identity in a way. So the more time you spend putting into that, like the more secure and confident you'll be in making the decisions. It may look crazy. Like, when I quit my job, I was working for the government and had 15 years of school and everybody thought I was nuts. Like, and oh, what do you went to da-da-da, like, and so you just got to hold fast with what what you want and don't break that for other people. The other thing, man, let's talk about finances. Like, I like this idea. For me, I had to do, so by the way, my first business was real estate investing. I had to flip a few houses before I felt confident enough to leave my job. And because of course the first one, I'm like, oh, this is great, but like, what if it's a fluke? Like, what if this is beginner's luck? And then, from there, it's like, then I had the confidence. And so I think there's a financial component as well. Now you will, by the way, and I'm not saying this is wrong. I just literally, we just had our business builder workshop in Raleigh recently, and there's a kid I shouldn't say a kid. He's a man. He's 30. I say I sound like an old person now. And he had a job. He's like, man, I'm ready to hit it right now. I'm ready to quit tomorrow. And he was going to pull out half of his 401k and live off of it while his business was moving forward. And I'm like, dude, wow, like that's all in. And I'm like, hey, I'm not here to say if that's right or wrong. And of course, like, I'm here to support you, but I didn't do that because I had much more fear, and I'm much more of a logical and analytical and slower moving person. And some people are the ones who make the jump and they build the parachute on the way down. That wasn't my approach. And so there is no right or wrong, but I think in a perfect world, we can all agree that, usually, and again, maybe this is wrong, but like, some people are like, no, I need to have zero money in the bank so that I feel that fire to make things happen. And okay, if that's you, then go for it. I didn't do that. Like, I think having a little bit of a runway, a little bit of a cushion is helpful. So the first thing is, like, I would suggest before you quit your job, you have, 6 months of expenses, like, set up in advance, maybe even a year, because business is a little unpredictable, especially when you start. Add in maybe a few months of operating costs for your business, for startup costs, and run those numbers in advance. That's, again, just my advice. Like, I'm not saying you have to follow it, and maybe you're like, no, let's do it, and that's cool too. Like, I'm cheering for you, but those would be some things I'd consider. I also would encourage people to know, like, what is your monthly nut, your spend that you need to kind of live your life. Like, what is the real cost of living your life, and track that and have a really good number. And, we talk about this, the Get a Life Getaway. Like, what are the things that you could maybe potentially get rid of temporarily, at least, while you're getting your business up and running, so that you can kind of clear as much clutter and reduce as much overhead as possible from your life, so you can really be focused on your business. If you have a lifestyle that costs you 20 grand a month, it's a lot more difficult to get the business going if you only need, 3 or 4 or 5 grand.
Yeah. What would you say to someone when, like, for instance, like you said at the beginning of the podcast, that some people are losing their, getting unemployed right now. They're getting let go and things like that. So maybe they don't have 6 months in their bank account, right? And they're like, okay, this is my answer to go after this entrepreneurship, right? I gotta go take care of this right now.
Dude, I think this is it's a personal question, a personal answer rather. I think if you're going to get laid off, hopefully you're getting some severance, and maybe that could float you for a few months. And in the meantime, like, I guess you got to decide, what is your vision? Like, is it worth going out to getting another job temporarily until you build up the war chest, or are you the type of person that can flourish and kind of, like, you're okay, and maybe you have a dual income with your family, or other sources of income that you can kind of make ends meet, or maybe you can just really listen. I don't want to, but I'm going to give up the daily Starbucks, and we're going to, like, stop going out to eat, and we're going to really, like, just tighten the belt while this whole thing takes off. Like, I think it depends on your vision, man. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, one thing I would say that just popped into my head is that as you're talking through this is, I think it's important for people to figure out what their vision is. I know it's like, we talk about this on the Lifeonaire Show here a lot, but if you're going to the business, creating the business, write the business vision for yourself. And the reason why I'm saying this, when I first started my business, the first business, I did not have a business vision. I had an idea where I wanted to go, what this business should look like, but I never had a real, actual business vision that where I'm going to. And what that did is had me, jump from one thing to another. I probably went through about, I don't know, 10 different businesses kind of a thing. Looked in there a little bit. I learned something over here. That didn't work so well. I got, oh, that doesn't work. So then I moved something else, moved something else. And I think that squirrel kind of a ideology that goes around with this is what gets people stuck to be able to actually make the difference. So that business vision aspect, it's that kind of like this GPS, this guiding light that's going to tell you which way to go on how you need to go approach this whole business. Because I think that's not being taught. And I mean, I got an MBA and they told me about business plan, but they never told me what this business should look like, kind of a thing, So I think it's a big part of this.
Totally, dude. The other thing I would say is, like, in a perfect world, you pressure test your business before you quit. And so, like, you start it perhaps as a side hustle, and you generate confidence through making money, and you can, and maybe it's, listen, and let me also say this, there is no magic formula for this. You're going to have to spend time on weekends or at night or in the morning or over lunch break. You got to find time to put in the business when you're first starting off, when you have a job, and you see how much money you can make. Like, if you can work 2 hours a day, or maybe, whatever, 15 hours a week, and you're going to make a portion of what your full-time income is it reasonable to think that that will scale with more time? Like if you were working 6 hours a day, or 4 to 6 hours a day, or more, is it possible for you to scale that? And do you expect a linear scale? Meaning, like, if you were spending more time in this, and it's 2 hours now, you go to 4 hours, could you double the amount of money you make? And that'll give you a little bit of confidence. And in a perfect world, you're making as much as you make at your full-time job within your business, or pretty close to it before you quit, to give you that confidence.
Yeah. So, yeah, and obviously, and that's one of the things I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast is that, you got to test constantly, I think, when you're starting this. Want to make sure that actually people want to buy what you're selling, right? Because if you don't have that, then what's the point of going after all this thing? So when Wojo talks about this thing of, selling and revenue, I think that's a big part that most entrepreneurs put it on the back burner, and they start using, okay, I got to get this first before I can do that. And I think the first thing you need to do is whatever you're looking to sell, whether service or product, whatever it might be, the people are willing to buy. And they're buying gives you confidence, and then you start looking, okay, how do I scale this? How do I make more of this? How to make more sales, more money? And when you start doing that, I think it's going to give you this transition period that's going to be, I don't want to say smoother, but I think it's going to be much more effective, I think, as opposed to, jumping all over the place.
The other thing I would say is a big thing that holds people back is, like, what about health insurance? Because this is a huge, and by the way, if you actually think about this, like, staying at a job that you hate for health insurance, man, that's a tough trade, man. That stinks. So you have a couple options. One, of course, is Cobra, which is basically based off your old employer's plan. It's usually pricey, though, and I think you can do that for up to 18 months. Unless you have a lot of health issues, I'm not sure I'd recommend that. It's fairly expensive. Other options you have are some of the health sharing programs that you've seen out there, Peter. Do you remember any of the names of them? Like, I can't.
One is Medishare. That's pops into my head. Medishare is one of them.
There's a Christian one too.
Christian Ministries.
Christian Healthcare Ministries, maybe. Like, I can't.
Something like that. Yeah.
So look up that. They're basically like, it's a medical sharing program. So you pay in, and then when somebody has something happen, you basically get reimbursed for your expenses, is my understanding of it. But don't quote me on that because I have not used it. What I did is I went out and got an HSA, a health savings account, which is a high deductible plan. It's very, very inexpensive. And essentially what it does mean is you're paying out of pocket, for the first 5 or 10 grand of medical expenses. But the intent behind it is that it doesn't create a catastrophic medical event that bankrupts you. So, you're not going to have $100,000 medical bill, right? But, like, listen, you are paying out of pocket for that first, 5, 10 grand, whatever that deductible is. But the HSA itself is relatively cheap. Now, the cool thing with an HSA, and this is way beyond the topic of this episode, is you can have a self-directed HSA just like you do, a self-directed IRA. And for those of you who aren't familiar with this, it's very different than a self-directed with, like, say, Charles Schwab or something like that. A truly self-directed one is, with a custodian who allows you to buy real estate, write notes, own property, blah, blah, blah. And so you can do that with an HSA as well. So you can kind of generate some more money in there as additional investment opportunity. And so, so that's what I did. What did you do, man? Some people, by the way, some people go with no health insurance, which always makes me nervous. I don't like that option.
Yeah. Well, when I first, because I had kids, so we got some kind of a health insurance, but I don't remember what that was. Now I have my own business, basically.
Well, I think your wife was employed, right?
Yeah, she was. So I think that's
you probably had her health insurance.
Yeah, I think that's why I did. So that could be, spouse,
Yep.
If you're married, and kind of work from that. So yeah, health insurance is important. The other thing that just popped into my head as you're talking about it, I think I did this, so I know that's the wrong way of doing this. You go and make some money, make some revenue, and you pull that money out of the business and you go buy stuff. And I think what ends up happening, because there's the idea of keeping up with the Joneses that comes up, and people do that and they get stuck. They can't grow the business. So you want to take money and keep reinvesting it into the business. I think there is a big, that's something so important for whatever you end up making. Now, obviously, you have to pay for your expenses that you have, like living expenses, but you got to put some money back into the business for a period of time so you can start growing it a little bit more, as opposed to buying this or buying that, or, and then you increase your expenses, and then you are never out of those kind of out of woods kind of a thing. You know what I mean?
So good point on that, man. Like, so as much as you're able to, I would encourage you to kind of bootstrap it early on. Like, don't just go and spend a whole bunch of money because someone else has some expensive CRM, or they have like all this fancy like signs, or they have like the latest, MacBook Pro, or the latest camera or microphone, right? Like, start where you are and make really smart decisions when money's tight, because that's just being a good steward of your money, and it'll go a lot further. Now, at some point, can you upgrade? Yeah, but like, don't let that cripple, unless it's like literally helping you make money. Like, don't do it. Like, just hold off, like, because, spend money on the things that'll make you money early on, especially.
Yep.
All right. Next thing I want to talk about is timing. So I would encourage you as much as possible. Now, sometimes it's out of your hands. Like, sometimes you're laid off, and sometimes you are, you just let go abruptly, and they hand you your box, and you empty out your desk. And, which, by the way, dude, is always crazy. I mean, I've heard so many stories like that. You could work somewhere for 20 years and they'll like literally watch you pack up your desk because they don't trust you.
Happened to a lot of my friends in 2008.
Yeah. And so my encouragement would be like to have a plan, like have a deadline or a set number of criteria, metrics that, hey, I've either made this much money, or, have a plan for like when you're going to quit. Don't just quit because you're angry one day and you're just like, I'm out of here. Like, screw you. Like, that's probably not going to be the right plan. So your emotions are valid, but you need a plan. And so again, maybe it's a minimum amount saved, or a consistent income from your business, or, and we haven't even talked about making sure your spouse is on board with this too. But like, I was
going to mention that.
That's a whole, man, that could be a whole series of episodes. Right. And so I'd also, along those lines, like I would bow out gracefully if you're able to, like, and don't, you don't have to be like, sticking it to them kind of thing. If you're able to be mature about it, and, it just lands a little bit softer, and who knows, like preserves your reputation and your relationships.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wasn't like, the boss came into
I
like,
think you mooned your boss, didn't you?
Mooned?
Yeah.
No, I don't think that was not that extreme. No, but I'm not gonna throw the boss underneath this, under the bus here. But he came in, he was gonna lay me off because the times were tough, and I ended up quitting because of that whole relationship and everything. So, to me, that was much more liberating, and actually put a fire under my butt, because I was doing something on the side, my own business, and I started, had a strong why. So it goes back, like, my strong why is to support my family, my 3 kids and wife and everything. And that's what I was doing. There were so many different things I did wrong, but at the same time, if it wasn't for that decision, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you guys. So, yeah.
Yep. All right, man. What else you got? Like, I mean, here's something else. Like, we haven't talked about this yet. When you're an entrepreneur, and this gets back to your vision, you need to be really diligent about setting boundaries for how much you work, because especially when like you don't have someone, you don't just, when you have a job, you can oftentimes leave at 5 and you go home and you don't think about it till the next day. Not every job, but a lot. When you're an entrepreneur, you gotta manually turn that off as much as you're able to, or else you're gonna end up thinking about your family when you're working, and you're gonna end up thinking about work when you're with your family, and you're gonna end up sacrificing both of them. So you really got to kind of like learn to enforce these boundaries between work and play, between your personal life. And so like, that is one thing. And by the way, let me also say this is not something you solve once and you figure it out. It is just like going to the gym. Like, at least I found it that way, man. You gotta every day, you gotta be able to turn it off, and it gets better and easier the more you do it. And there's ways to do that more easily, but like there's always going to be this temptation to get a little bit more work done, send out one more email, one more phone call, and you got to just kind of really kind of temper that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if you remember my story from 2011, but, I want to pick up and drop on my kids. So between 10 and 2:30, those were the times when I was dropping off my kids and picking up my kids. So what ended up happening between those hours, I had to work like my hair is on fire. So
You obviously didn't do a good job, bro.
I did. I don't know about you.
I did. No, I did.
No, you did not, because you don't have any hair. Okay.
Right, because I worked like my hair was on fire and like so it burned off.
Okay, I guess we're looking from a different perspective. So, okay, but fine. You got no hair, I got hair. Let's just go with that. All right, how about that? So, where was I before I got rudely interrupted?
I forgot.
All right, I don't know where. Okay, so I work between the hours of 10 and 2:30. So what does that mean? That means that I have to be very intentional to work on exactly the most important aspects and in part of my business that's going to make me money between those 2 hours. So those boundaries, those things outside of it, like picking up and dropping my kids, made me more intentional during that time. So set yourself up for the win. Set yourself up for, okay, I got these boundaries, whether it's a dinner with wife and the kids at 6:00, or it's picking up the kids or dropping off the kids. And when you start looking from that perspective, all of a sudden the time management conversation that a lot of us have starts to go out the window, because you become more intentional. You become present. You make whatever that's in front of me right now is the most important thing right now. That's how I look at things. Like right now, we're recording this podcast. This is the most important thing right now. Next, then I'm going to go to the gym. This is the most important thing right now. So when you start working, operating from that perspective, all of a sudden you get more intentional, and you don't allow the world to dictate you how you need to spend your time, what you need to do, and who you need to talk to. You start to be much more in charge of your life. And It's okay, because I think a lot of us who are people pleasers, and that's a whole different discussion, that people pleasers getting to be an entrepreneur, that's not a very good combo. So you're going to have to set yourself up in a way that you can say no, because that's one of the biggest things in the business when you're an entrepreneur, is to learn to be able to say no. And say no more times than saying yes. And that's a big thing.
Yep. Well, I mean, we covered a lot, and hopefully this isn't overwhelming for you. We are currently working on almost like an ebook version of this to help people that are looking to make that change from employee to entrepreneur. So be on the lookout for that soon. Of course, you can always learn more over at lifeonaire.com if you want to see if that is up yet or not. As of the recording of this, we're recording this late November. It's probably going to be a few more weeks before that's ready. At the beginning of the next year, certainly at the latest. So, man, and for everybody listening, like speaking now as an entrepreneur who's been full-time, like I said, almost 15 years, I would never go back. And I think it's been probably 1 in 1,000, maybe 1 in 500 that goes back. And by the way, we didn't talk about this, man. I do think that anybody can be an entrepreneur if you want it bad enough. You got to be willing to make some sacrifices, make some hard choices, do some things, but like, I think anybody has the ability to be an entrepreneur if you really, are determined. And just to me, the amount of freedom, the amount of like, I just love not having glass ceilings and not having a boss and not having like, to be told what to do or have somebody else determining how much money I make, all of it. Like, it's just amazing. And the trade-off in the perceived security really isn't even a trade-off anyway, because you're not really safe at any job, as we're seeing now in our unstable economy. So, like, to me, it's a no-brainer, man.
Yeah, I mean, I love entrepreneurship. There's so much, I know we talked about different fallbacks and holes and things like that when it comes to entrepreneurship, but being an entrepreneur is one of the coolest things that I got to experience and be able to now and go hang out with my wife and kids. And like, my kid just came over here a little while ago and we hang out for a little bit. That's a cool thing. If I was working for someone else, it is, was like about 2:45, 3:00 in the afternoon. I wouldn't be able to do that. You know what I mean?
Totally,
so
dude.
That's a cool thing.
Well, listen, hope you liked it. Give us a like, give us a review. If you have a question about making this kind of change, find us on social. Both Peter and I are on social, or you can join the Lifeonaire group. The group itself is called Build the Life and Business You Love. And it says Lifeonaire there as well. And the URL is just facebook.com/groups/Lifeonaire. And we'll put it in the show notes as well, but just as well, it's facebook.com/groups/Lifeonaire. And feel free to chime in there and ask questions. Peter and I are in there, so you can get like some help, and we'd love to cheer you over the cliff.
Yep.
All right, everybody, have an awesome one. We'll see you soon.